There's a moment that arrives quietly, almost without warning, when you realize you've said yes to something you didn't want to do again. The words left your mouth before you could stop them, and now you're carrying one more thing you don't have the energy for. One more commitment you wish you could take back. One more piece of yourself given away because saying no felt impossible. You've probably felt it. That instant regret, that internal scream that says, "Why did I agree to this?" But on the outside, you smile, you nod, you say, "Of course, no problem." And the person asking has no idea that you just sacrificed your own peace to keep theirs intact. People who always say yes aren't pushovers. They're not weak or naive or incapable of boundaries. They're just operating under a set of invisible rules that were written long before they had the words to question them. Rules that say other people's needs matter more than their own. That being helpful means being valuable. That saying no is the same as being selfish. There's a psychology behind this that runs deeper than most people realize. Because constantly saying yes isn't about being agreeable, it's about survival. It's about a belief system so old and so automatic that it feels like truth. The belief that your worth is earned through service, that love is conditional on usefulness, that if you stop giving, people will stop caring. And once that belief takes root, it shapes everything. The way you move through the world, the way you see yourself, the way you exhaust yourself trying to be everything for everyone while becoming nothing for yourself. Psychologists call this people-pleasing behavior, but that term doesn't capture the weight of it. Because people who always say yes aren't just trying to please others, they're trying to protect themselves from rejection, from conflict, from the terrifying possibility that if they say no, they'll be abandoned. Most people who can't say no learned it early, in childhoods where love felt conditional, where being good meant being quiet, where having needs made you a burden. They learned that their value wasn't inherent. It was something they had to earn, over and over, every single day. And the easiest way to earn it was to say yes to whatever was asked, to whatever was needed, to become the person who never complained, never disappointed, never caused trouble. Because trouble meant consequences, and consequences felt like the end of the world. So they became experts at reading rooms, at sensing what people wanted before they even asked, at molding themselves into whatever shape was needed to keep the peace. And over time, that skill became a prison, because they forgot how to say what they actually wanted. They forgot that their needs were allowed to exist. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes with always saying yes. It's not just physical tiredness, though that's part of it. It's the exhaustion of living a life that doesn't feel like yours, of filling your days with obligations you didn't choose, of performing a version of yourself that's helpful, available, endlessly accommodating, while the real you quietly suffocates underneath. And the worst part is that people don't see it. They see someone capable, someone generous, someone who never says no. And they keep asking. Not because they're cruel, but because you've trained them that you'll always say yes. That your time, your energy, your boundaries are endlessly flexible. That you don't have limits. But you do have limits. You're just terrified of enforcing them. Because every time you think about saying no, a voice rises up inside you. A voice that says, if you say no, they'll think you're selfish. They'll be disappointed. They'll stop liking you. They'll leave. And that voice is so convincing, so automatic, that saying no feels like risking everything. People who always say yes often have something in common. a deep fear of being disliked. Not just disliked, but seen as difficult, as demanding, as someone who causes problems instead of solving them. And in a world that rewards agreeableness, especially in certain people, that fear makes sense. Because society teaches us that saying yes is noble, that self-sacrifice is virtue, that putting others first makes you a good person. And people who always say yes have internalized that message so deeply that they can't separate their worth from their willingness to serve. So they say yes to everything, to plans they don't want to make, to favors they don't have time for, to emotional labor they can't afford. And every yes chips away at them a little more, until one day they wake up and realize they're living a life entirely constructed around other people's needs. There's a psychological term for this: codependency. The idea that your sense of self becomes so entangled with others that you lose track of where they end and you begin. And for people who always say yes, that entanglement is suffocating, because they don't know how to exist without being needed, without being useful, without saying yes. Their identity is built on availability, on being the person everyone can count on. And the thought of stepping back, of prioritizing themselves, feels like betraying who they are, even though who they are is exhausted, resentful, quietly falling apart. Here's the part most people don't talk about. People who always say yes don't just say yes to others. They say no to themselves every single time. No to rest, no to boundaries, no to their own desires, no to the life they actually want because they're too busy living the life everyone else needs them to have. And that internal no is louder than any external yes, because it's the voice that says your needs don't matter as much as theirs. Your time isn't as valuable. Your peace isn't as important. And over time, that voice becomes so dominant that they forget they're allowed to want different things, to choose differently, to say no without guilt. I remember the first time I realized I couldn't stop saying yes. It was small. Someone asked me to do something I genuinely didn't want to do, and I felt my mouth forming the word no. But it never came out. Instead, I said yes, smiled, acted like it was fine. And inside, I felt something break. Not loudly, just a quiet crack. The realization that I wasn't in control of my own words, that some part of me was so afraid of disappointing them that I'd rather disappoint myself. And if you've been there, you know that feeling, that trapped sensation, like you're watching yourself agree to things you don't want, while some other version of you screams silently in the background. The hardest part about always saying yes is that people start to expect it. They stop asking if you're okay with something. They just assume you will be. And when you finally do try to say no, they act shocked, hurt, confused, because you've trained them to believe that your yes is infinite. And that's not their fault, not entirely, because you've been protecting them from your boundaries for so long that they don't even know those boundaries exist. You've made yourself so available that unavailability feels like a betrayal. But here's the truth. You are not responsible for other people's disappointment, their frustration, their inconvenience. You are not a resource to be used up. You are a person, and your time, your energy, your peace matter just as much as anyone else's. So what changes this? What breaks the cycle of endless yes? It's not a dramatic shift, it's a quiet one. It starts with noticing how often you say yes when you mean no, noticing the resentment that builds afterward, noticing the way your body tenses when someone asks you for something because you already know you'll say yes even though you want to say no. And then it's about practicing, not perfection, just practice. Saying no in small, low-stakes situations. Letting people be disappointed without rushing to fix it. Sitting with the discomfort that comes from prioritizing yourself instead of performing your learned role. Because saying no is a skill. And like any skill, it gets easier with repetition. The first no feels impossible. The second one feels terrifying. But by the 10th, the 20th, the 100th, it starts to feel like something else. Like freedom. Here's what people who always say yes need to understand. Saying no doesn't make you selfish. It makes you honest. It means you're finally valuing your own needs
as much as you've been valuing everyone else's. And that's not cruelty, that's balance. You don't owe people unlimited access to you. You don't owe them yes every time they ask. You don't owe them explanations for why you can't. No is a complete sentence, and learning to say it without guilt is one of the most radical acts of self-care you can practice. But there's something people who always say yes fear more than anything. That if they start saying no, they'll lose people. That relationships built on their constant availability will crumble the moment they set a boundary. And sometimes that fear is valid. Some people will leave. Some people will be upset. Some people will accuse you of changing, of being difficult, of not being who you used to be. And here's the hard truth. Let them. Because anyone who only values you for what you give them was never seeing you clearly in the first place. They were seeing a service, a function, not a person. The people who truly care about you will adjust. They'll respect your no. They'll value your boundaries. They'll understand that your worth isn't tied to your willingness to sacrifice yourself. And here's the beautiful part. The more you say no to what depletes you, the more space you create for what fulfills you. For relationships built on mutual respect instead of one-sided giving. For a life that feels like yours instead of a collection of obligations you inherited. You don't have to be endlessly available to be loved. You don't have to be constantly giving to be valuable. You don't have to say yes to everything to matter. You already matter, just as you are, with boundaries, with limits, with needs. So if you're someone who always says yes, this is your permission to say no, to rest, to disappoint people if it means protecting yourself, to prioritize your own peace without apologizing for it. You've spent so long being everything for everyone. Maybe it's time to be something for yourself. And that starts with one word, no. Not said harshly, not said with anger, just said. Clearly, firmly, without the guilt you've been conditioned to feel. Because the people who love you will understand, and the ones who don't were never yours to keep. You are allowed to say no. You always were.